Hi friends, Tiffany here. Welcome to my quilting life. In today's video, I'm going to show you how to make this faith wall hanging. It's actually really simple and beginners can do this. So let's get to making this faith wall hanging, and I'm going to show you how to pick fabric and all that, and then we'll get to the cutting and all the stuff. So let's get to it. So for the cross part of our wall hanging, we need just 1/8 of a yard, but I'm going to use a fat quarter. Same as the shadow that you saw on the sides, we only need 1/8 of a yard. Again, I'm just going to use a fat quarter for that. And then for the background and the border, we need 1/2 a yard of each. So we're going to choose from wherever the 1/2 yards are on here, and then from the fat quarter bin. So let's go over to the fat quarter bin and choose our cross first, and then we'll choose our background color to play off of that. So let's go over to the fat quarters. Here we are at the fat quarters. Now, you don't have to have a brown cross. You can have whatever color you want, but I'm going to go ahead and choose a brown for mine. So I'm going to start with, we're here in the browns drawer. I'm going to go ahead and choose a darker brown. It can be whatever you want it to be, honestly. There's that. I'm going to just keep scrolling through. It's got to be something that's going to speak to me. That's nice. I like that. All right. Here I have a brown that has X's on it. That'll work. It's not quite X's. It's like a little tiny print. Now I'm going to play off of this for my shadow with a lighter brown. Oops. Let's see. Ooh. That'll work. Again, it doesn't have to be solids. It doesn't have to be the right exact color, but these are the two colors I'm going to go with. So from here, we're going to go over to my wall of 1/2 yard cuts, and we're going to choose a 1/2 yard that balances these colors. All right, here we are at the 1/2 yards, this and this. And now I have all of my stuff marked now so that I can tell what's what. So right here, like anything above this is butterflies, anything above this is novelty, solids, blenders, hard blenders, down here is floral, leaves, random, blah, blah, blah. I have it all marked now. I kind of want to go with a floral and some leaves for my border. So we're going to go ahead now and throw this on the floor, and I'm going to like scoot the camera down a little. So I'm going to go ahead now and just pull all of my leaves out and set them aside. And we're going to come here to the florals. And I am going to, ooh, that's pretty. I like that. Here, I'm going to pull this one out. Slide this back in its spot. We're going to take a look at how it looks together. Ooh, I like that. That'll stick out really nicely, and my shadow won't be in the way of the background color. That's perfect. Now I need a border print. So this is my background. Now I need to choose a border print, which I want a leaf for. So I'm going to go ahead and bring that over. I'm just going to lay that here to the side. You know, right off the top, that's like perfect. I'm going to go with this right here. There we go. Let's see what it all looks like together real quick. So we have the cross, the shadow, the background, and the border. I like that. That's like perfect right off the top. So let's go over and I will give you all the measurements, and they will also be in the description below this video. So let's go over there and iron this up and make some cuts. I've gone ahead and pressed my fabric. So this is my border. This is my background, and if you're curious, you won't be able to find it though. These are older probably. This is Lauren's Flowers for RJR Fashion Fabrics for Quilters by Quilters. So that's what this one is. And then this one is Poetry by, I have no idea, for Moda Fabrics. I can't even really read that, even if I put my glasses on. It's S. Sultries? I have no idea. And then I can't tell you on the fat quarters because, well, there is no salvage for me to read. So I'm going to go ahead now. I am going to set aside my background and my border print. Just going to move over my shadow, and I'm going to start with my cross. Now, again, all the measurements of the cuts that you need will be in the description below this video, and also in the Facebook group. You can join the Facebook group, and usually a copy of all of my patterns in a downloadable PDF will be available to you. I've straightened my edge, and now we are going to cut 2 3-inch strips off of here. Like I said, you only needed 1 3-inch strip if you are using your 1/8 of a yard. But we are just using a fat quarter here. So 2 of these cuts makes 1 full strip. Now I'm going to go ahead and set this aside, because I can use this to make another one if I would like to. I'm going to set this over here, and we're going to go ahead now, and I am going to subcut this 3-inch strip into, right here, 3 7-inch by 3-inch pieces. So I'm going to cut my selvage off, and we're going to cut 3 7-inch rectangles, 3-inch by 7-inch. 2, and you should get the third. You should get all 3. You should still have a little tiny bit left over using the fat quarter. Now, if you were using the whole entire strip, I don't mean to confuse you here, but if you were going to use the whole entire strip, you could cut 1 solid piece for the center. But I actually like it this way, where we have a square for the center of the cross, due to the fact that you can line it up easier, especially for beginners who are not used to it yet, so that you can get both sides of your cross exactly equal. So I'm doing it this way, but I will put in the instructions an alternative where you only cut 2 of these and 1 strip from your 1/8 of a yard, because we're using a fat quarter here. We don't have that measurement, but you would cut 1 strip that's 23.5 inches by 3 inches. Again, fat quarter can't do that. But we are going to cut 1 strip that is 14.5 inches, 14.5 inch by 3 inch. So there's that. And then 1 3-inch square. And there's my leftover. So from our 2 3-inch strips from our fat quarter, you get 3 7-inch by 3-inch rectangles, 1 3-inch by 14.5-inch strip, and 1 3-inch by 3-inch square. All right, so I'm going to set these aside, and we're going to cut now on our shadow fabric. Now again, I'm using a fat quarter here. I'm not using the 1/8 of a yard, so it'd be easier if you had the 1/8, but you know, honestly, I'm just using fat quarters. It makes it easier, and I can make more than one with the fat quarter, especially the way I have decided to cut this, you know. But I'll put in the, description, the measurement, if you don't want to use a fat quarter and you just want to use an eighth of an inch. I mean, 1/8 of a yard. Whoo wee. All right, from our shadow fabric, I'm going to cut 3 1.5-inch strips. I'm just going to straighten all this up and cut. I need 2 1.5-inch strips. 1. 2. So we're going to cut 2 1.5 inch strips. This is just your one strip, you know, like as again, it's one strip if you were using the 1/8 of a yard. So 2 1.5 inch strips and 1 2.5 inch strip, I think. Yeah, that should be, yeah, you should have plenty to do that with 1/8 of a yard. All right, I'm going to go ahead now and set this aside. Really, I mean, this is very simple to do. All right, I'm going to start with my 1.5 inch strips. And we're going to subcut off of this 2 6-inch by 1.5 inch rectangles. So 2 6-inch, 1 and 2. So 2 6-inch. Then we want 1 7-inch off of this one. So 2 6-inch, 1 7-inch. And then from the second piece, we're going to get this all from one strip, by the way, if you're using your 1/8 of a yard. We're going to cut 1 12.5 inch, 12 1/2, and then 1 3-inch. So 1 3-inch. This is from your one strip if you cut from your 1/8 of a yard. If you're just using fat quarters, cut 2 1.5 inch strips. And like I said, you're going to cut 1 3-inch, 2 6-inch, 1 7-inch, and 1 12.5 inch. And then from your 2.5 inch strip, you're just going to cut 2 2.5 inch squares. And like I said, there's enough here to make more than one cross. You just need to choose more than one, you know, background fabric. All right, so those cuts are done. So I'm going to set these aside. Now we're going to grab our background. I'm not worrying about the border fabric at this moment. Just want the background. So I'm going to go ahead now and straighten this up. Yep, I'm going to block the camera all the way with my head so that I can see up there. All right, from your background, nice straight line here. I am going to make 1 8-inch strip, 1 8-inch strip. So I'm going to line this up, cut 1 8-inch strip, 1 2.5 inch strip, and 2 1.5 inch strips. Set that aside, don't need it. Again, 1 8-inch strip, 1 2.5, and 2 1.5. So right now I'm just going to set that aside and we're going to work on this 8-inch strip first. I'm going to go ahead now and cut the selvage off. And we're going to subcut our 8-inch strip into 2 7-inch, 2 7-inch by 8-inch. So subcutting, it was an 8-inch strip. Now we subcutted 7 inches off of there. Set that aside. And now bring it over and we're going to cut 2 13 1/2 inch. So we're going to go to 13 1/2. You should have plenty if you're using the right amount of fabric on your half yard. And this is what, you know, the fold is what's left. So I have 2 8 by 7 inches, and I have two 8 by 13.5 inches. All right, I'm going to set those aside just so that you can see. And then we're going to grab the 2.5 inch strip. This was a total waste of a cut, but yeah, I can just cut the rest into 2.5 inch squares. So we're going to cut two 2.5 inch squares off of here, two 2.5 inch squares, set those aside. This can just be string or whatever. Now for our two 1.5 inch strips, we're going to subcut those. All right, so I have one strip here first. We're going to cut two 19 by 1.5. So we're going to go to 19 inch. All right, here's 19 inches. So two 19 by 1.5. Just throw that other piece aside. And then your second strip, you're going to cut two 4 inch by 1.5 inch pieces. Just two 4 inch by 1.5. Again, extra for whatever you want to use all this stuff for. All right, so we're going to go through this all over again, starting from the cross fabric. You are going to cut two off your fat quarter. This is from a fat quarter. Two 3 inch strips, subcut three 7 inch by 3 inch. Then from your second piece, subcut a one 3 inch by 14.5 inch piece, and then one 3 inch square. Then from your shadow fabric, you are going to cut two 1.5 inch strips. Sorry about that. Two 1.5 inch strips. You're going to subcut one 7 inch by 1.5, two 6 inch by 1.5, one 3 inch by 1.5, and one 12.5 inch by 1.5. Now this one and this one come from the same strip, and then all three of these come from the same strip. Then from that same accent color, or the shadow color, you're going to cut two 2.5 inch squares. You're going to cut one strip and two 2.5 inch strip and two 2.5 inch squares. From your background, you are going to cut one 8 inch strip, one 8 inch strip. You're going to turn that and subcut it into 7 inches, so an 8 by 7 inch, two 8 by 7 inch pieces. And then you're going to cut again right after that to two 13.5 inch by 8 inch pieces. Then you're going to cut your one 2.5 inch strip. You're going to get two 2.5 inch squares. And then you're going to cut your one 1.5 inch strip, and you're going to subcut your two 1.5 inch strips. Sorry, two 1.5 inch strips. Subcut into one of the strips into two 19 inch by 1.5 inch. And then your second strip, you're just going to take two 4 inch by 1.5 inch pieces off of there. Okay, hopefully I got that all. And then your border, when we go to cut it, it also has measurements already. So I'm going to go ahead now. We're going to lay this out, and I'm going to lay it out as if you are looking at it, not as if I am looking at it. So I'm going to go ahead and set those aside. Set that aside. Set that aside. Set all this aside. And this is as if you were looking at it. That was there. This is as if you were looking at it. You know, I'm upside down, so it's a little different for me. All right, those are going to go like that. Then you are going to take your 8" by 7" and lay them here. 8" this way, 7" this way, 8" this way, 7" that way. Then your other big pieces that are 13½, you're going to put one on this side and one on this side. This. Obviously it looks weird at the moment. Your background pieces that are 1½ by 4" goes one on each side. I'm not going to worry about the 19" right now. Those can just go right here. And your 2½ squares, we're going to pair them up right sides together. One background, one shadow. One background, one shadow, right sides together. And we're going to draw a line from corner to corner and sew on both sides of that line. Here we are at the machine. I have them right sides together, one background with one shadow. I'm going to sew on both sides of my drawn line. And of course the camera's on. It never ceases to amaze me how that works every time I turn the camera on. All right, sewing on one side of my drawn line, sewing on the other side of my drawn line. Flip them around and now sew the opposite side of my drawn line. And now let's just snip them apart. You're going to cut on your line or use your rotary cutter however you see fit. I'm just going to split mine right here with the scissors. And we are going to press towards the background. Press towards the background on all of these, or trim them first, however you see fit on your half square triangles. But I'm just going to go ahead and trim them after the fact, as in press them first and then trim. So I'm going to go ahead now and just press all these towards the dark. I have them pressed towards the dark, and I'm going to go ahead and trim them now. They are oversized, and I did that on purpose for beginners. Plus, I'd rather have a 2½ strip left over than a 2". So I'm going to go ahead now and just line this up, and we're going to trim these to 1½ So 1½ There's it there, there's it there, lining up at the corner. Again, just a tiny bit of waste. But I wanted to make sure that you beginners out there had plenty of space to work with in case you mess up. So 1½ squares, trim them all to 1½ and then I'll show you where to place them once they're all trimmed. I kind of can't do that part upside down. I actually have to stand there and look at it to do that. Because, well, you know, I'm not an upside down worker, but I want you guys to see how things go. So we're trimming these to 1½ It's not a whole lot of waste. I just wanted to make sure you had plenty, and 2½ strips are better than a smaller number when it comes to my leftovers. All right, one more time. All right, those are my 4 pieces. Here is my waist. Just gonna take that now, toss it, and we're gonna place these where they go. All right, here we are at the cross. We're gonna take our half square triangles and place them where they need to go in the direction they go. So we're gonna go ahead now and place this one right here. And that one, the shadow corner is facing up and the background is facing down to your left. Okay, we're going to grab another one that's going to go way up there at the top, which I cannot reach from here, but it's going to go with the background up to the right and your shadow down to the left. Then we're going to grab another one, and this one's going to go down here at the bottom. I'm not sure if the camera is picking that up. Here at the bottom of the screen, your background is going to go down to your bottom right, and your shadow is going to go up to your top left. And then your last piece is going to go up there, and that one is going to go with your background to the top right and your shadow to the bottom left, and it is going to go right here. Just like that. So there is all the parts and pieces, and now we're going to hook them together the way they get sewn together. We're going to start by taking this piece and we're going to sew them together. And then when we're done, we're going to press it towards the long piece of your shadow. So with your 1/4 inch seam, I'm going to go ahead and press it that way. It is now sewn on here and it's going to go right back here. So I'm going to go ahead and press it, place it right back here. Now we're going to grab the half square triangle here from the top and hook it to its corresponding piece, right sides together, so 1/4 inch. There it is right there. I'm going to go ahead and press it towards the shadow. Place it back where it goes. We're going to move on to this next one right here. The little 3-inch piece by 1.5 to the back to the half square triangle. I'm going to sew again with a 1/4 inch seam. Same with this one. I'm going to press it towards the longer shadow piece. Place it back in its spot. Grab my really long one here with its little shadow piece right here, put it on the bottom, sew a 1/4 inch seam. I'm going to go ahead and press towards the longer piece. Place it back in its spot. Now we're going to go ahead and this is going to be 1 unit and all this is going to be 1 unit right here. So I'm going to start by piecing this shadow to my 7-inch by 3-inch piece. This should be exactly the same size, 1/4 inch seam, and we're going to press towards the cross. Again, I'm just going to press this towards the cross piece. Once that is sewn, I'm going to take my background piece that's 1.5 inches by 4 inches, and I'm going to attach it to the side of that. And sew a 1/4 inch seam, and then I'm going to press towards the background. All right, there's that unit. Let's build this side's unit now. Now, I go ahead and take my 1.5 by 7 inch and my 3-inch by 7 inch, and I'm going to hook the shadow onto the cross. It should be exactly the same size. I'm going to go ahead now and press this towards the cross. It's now pressed towards the cross. I'm going to go ahead now and add my shadow, and that half square triangle should be exactly the same size to that side. It should be 4 inches in total. I'm going to sew a 1/4 inch seam, and then I'm going to press towards the cross. Now that that is pressed and it's towards the cross, I'm going to add my 1.5 inch by 4 inch background, and I'm going to press that towards the background. And that will go right here. We're going to go ahead now and attach the shadow to the background on this top part. So your shadow 1.5 by now 7 inches. And then your 7-inch by 8-inch piece, we're going to put those right sides together. And I'm going to press towards my background. All right, now that that one is sewn, we're going to go ahead now and take our 12.5, not 12.5, yes. Our background that is 13.5 with our 12.5 plus the half square triangle, which now makes 13.5 inch piece by 8 inch. We're going to put that on the long side and we're going to sew a 1/4 inch seam all the way down. I'm going to go ahead and press this towards the background. Once it's pressed, place it back into its spot. Now we're going to attach these 3 together. Now, like I said, you could have cut just 1 strip off of your 3-inch strip if you used the 1/8 yard. Cut 1 23.5 inch piece. I'm doing these 3 pieces because these nested seams will keep this cross lined up perfectly when we put them together. Plus, again, I used fat quarters, so we had the 3 pieces. But if you wanted, this centerpiece can be a totally different color, or you can put a little cute block there. Whatever your desires are, it could do it any way you want. But again, if you had used just the 1/8 yard from your long strip that you cut off of there, your 3-inch strip, one of the cuts is just going to be 23.5, and you would have only had 2 7-inch pieces off of there. We're doing 3 pieces here. So I'm going to attach all 3 of these together, and then I'm going to press this top one towards the center square, and this bottom one is going to be pressed towards this bottom. So it's going to all seams facing down. Well, yeah, for you, down. So I'm going to go ahead and attach these together. And again, I'm pressing my seams down. This should now be 23.5 inches. Now we're going to attach all these together, and we will have our cross. So I'm going to start by putting this right here, and I'm going to press towards the background after I sew my 1/4 inch seam. So I'm going to press towards the background. Once that is sewn, I'm going to grab this bottom and attach it. Should be exactly the right size, 1/4 inch seam, and I'm going to press towards the background. There that is. Now I'm going to repeat with these 3 pieces. Now it's just a matter of sewing these together. Now all the seams should be in opposite directions and they should nest together. So I did this so that you beginners can learn to nest your seams. And that way, if this was one solid piece, you would have to make sure that you're aligning this side and this side just right between this. It's easier if you just have the seam. It's the same fabric, so honestly, it doesn't really matter. So I'm going to go ahead now and attach to this side right here. And you can see my seams are in opposite directions. Okay, I'm going to go ahead now and sew a 1/4 inch seam down that side. I'm going to go ahead now and press this towards the cross. And when I add this side to it, I'm going to press towards the cross. So pressing towards the cross. So when you add this side now, your seams at the cross should be in opposite directions. So this one's going this way and these ones are going that way. So when you nest them together, they literally sit right next to each other. It's exactly the same size, so it should fit perfectly. So I'm going to go ahead now and sew it. And again, I'm going to press towards the cross. All right, so here's the cross. And for viewing purposes, because now we don't have enough room for you to see to top to bottom, I'm going to turn the cross sideways. And those background pieces that were 19 inches by 1.5, one goes on the bottom, one goes on the top. They should be exactly the same size. So I'm going to go ahead now and sew these on with a 1/4 inch seam, and I'm going to press towards the piece that I just added, the background. Again, pressing towards the piece I just added. I'm going to go ahead and add this one on. And here is the cross so far. Now to cut our borders. So I'm going to set this aside, and we're going to start on cutting the borders. All right, here is the border fabric. I'm going to go ahead and straighten one side of it. I'm going to block the camera so that I can see up there. All right, one side is straightened. Now we're going to cut 4 3-inch strips. 4 3-inch strips. And you should have plenty. You only needed 12 inches, which is 1/3 of a yard. Problem with that is that gives you no wiggle room in case you cut wrong. So, especially if the place you got your, 1/3 of a yard, cut it exactly at 12, you got to be precise. So I just gave you half a yard so you have plenty. So I'm going to cut 4 3-inch strips. Whew, my brain. 4 3-inch strips. And one more. I'm going to just set this aside. We're going to go ahead and 2 of the strips are going to get cut at one size and 2 at another size. So 2 of these are going to be cut. Stack them up. Oh, what am I doing? They need to be opened up. Sorry. Whew. Brain fart. 2 of them. Open your strips up. Lay them together. Just like this. I'm just going to move it like that. And then the other 2 are going to get stacked together because they also get to be the same size. Not this size, but that size. That we haven't even cut yet, but just letting you know they're going to be the same. All right, so 2 of your strips. Line them up. And we're going to cut 25.5 inches off of 2 of them. So I'm going to go ahead and straighten this up. Get rid of that selvage. line it up on a line, and we're going to come down to 25.5, which is right here. There we go, 2 25.5-inch strips, and then I don't need this. And then this, we're going to cut 2 24-inch, 2 24-inch pieces. All right, and I don't need that. So here's my 2 24-inch and 2 25.5-inch. So I'm going to go ahead now. We're going to grab our cross. Here are, oops, the 25s go on the side. So the 25.5 go on the side, and the 24s will go across the top. So I'm going to attach one of these on each side. Should be exactly the right size. One on each side, and then I'm going to press towards the border. Just going to lay this sideways because can't really see the top and bottom. Now all right, now your border pieces that are 24 should be exact. And mine just so happened to not be. Look at that. All right, either way, I'm going to sew them on. Mine are 1/2 inch too big. Maybe each time I make one of these, they're just different sizes. I don't know. All right, so 2 of your strips were 24 inches and 2 of them were 25.5 by 3 inches. Whew, I was looking at the wrong number on my sheet of paper. That is why. Anyways, again, 24 inches and 25.5 inches. So here's the cross. Let's put it up on the wall and take a look. So as you can tell, it didn't really even take an hour to make these. So they go quick, pretty quick. Sorry, I always screw up my videos when it comes to the numbers, but it's there. I wrote it all down. And so the correct numbers will be in the description below this video. So here's the one we just made. Like I said, it lines up so much better so that you have a nice straight cross as opposed to having that straight piece and having to make sure that this one is going to line up equal when you get to the other side. So the square in the middle, I would say if you are a beginner and not used to lining up one side to another, just put the square in the middle and nest your seams. That way your cross is continuous across here and down here. So here's 2 different colorways. Like I said, they go together so quick, so quick. And they're fun wall hangings. You can hang this anywhere in your home, or you can gift it to a friend or whatever. We're going to quilt these up, and I'm going to put some hanging hooks on it like I usually do with wall hangings. And I'm going to hang one here in my home as well. So I hope you enjoyed today's video. Thank you for watching. This is just a little bit different than we normally do here, but again, beautiful, right? I mean, it doesn't matter. So, oh, and also just a thought, you can make 4 of these and put them together and have a little lap quilt as well. And you can have all the same color cross or whatever. I mean, it's just an idea. You can do 3 across and 3 down, 2 down, or 3 across and 3 down for an even bigger size. That's up to you. That's if you want that many. But I mean, just on its own as a wall hanging, it looks absolutely gorgeous. So I'm going to go ahead and quilt these, and that's it. But I'm not going to do it in today's video because I'm just going to leave it at that. I don't have time. I got to get to editing this now. So by the time you see this video, maybe they'll have been quilted, but not in this video. So I know I'm rambling. Okay, I'm going to go now. Bye, everybody. Thank you for hanging out, and I'll see you in my next video. Toodles!